Welcome to the Americanamusic.com podcast with your host, Sarah Popejoy.
Today on Americanamusic.com, we're excited to welcome Michael Rudd. He's releasing his brand new album, Ways of the World. The dreamy album feels seamless, and before you even know it, you've listened to the whole thing. It's a great album. We're so glad to have you on the show. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Sarah. It's great to be here.
Michael, you're originally from New Jersey. You took a manual typewriter, a notebook, and a guitar, and you moved to New Mexico, where you spent 3 years of steady gigging in Albuquerque in the blues and rockabilly scene. Can you talk about what prompted you to move to New Mexico from New Jersey and about those early years?
Yeah, I was feeling, I still feel lost, but I was feeling particularly lost back then. I graduated from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and I'd returned back to New Jersey, and I was working for my grandfather. He owns an apartment house, and so I was doing maintenance there. He likes to start people at that level to learn the business, and I felt stuck. I felt close to my grandfather, close to my grandmother, but I wanted to start my life. I'd always had dreams of being a writer, a prose writer, not a songwriter. And I'd been writing for a couple of years already. I was living in Elizabeth, New Jersey, in a basement apartment, dark and dreary, but it certainly got my imagination going, reading Dostoevsky and others. I'd had enough, so I headed out on the road. In those days, I did have a manual typewriter. It was a light blue, I can't even remember the brand. Felt right in my hands. Yeah, I headed out on the road to Albuquerque, where my uncle still lived. He built a small house here in the South Valley. I happened to come in while the snow was coming. He was busy building a little casita right next to his house. I walked right into New Mexico culture at its best.
Oh, that's cool. You left your guitar in the case for 30 years before picking it up again. What changed?
I guess I should go back and answer your last question fully. After about a year, I joined a band, and we did play for a few years, 4-set nights. In those days, that's what we did. I think I put my guitar down partly because of the intensity of playing bands and playing out, and also because I just wasn't feeling the music anymore at that point and wanted to commit myself to writing. Not the smartest decision, but then what changed was having a family, prioritizing certain things. Once our first child was born, and really even before, because I'd lost passion in music. I just had lost the passion to play music. And then once we began to have children and I began a career in education, I just had priorities elsewhere. Meanwhile, I was writing a whole lot. I wrote several novels over the course of 20 or 25 years. None of them very good. None of them published. I wrote short stories and poems. And so that's where I put my creative impulses without even thinking about playing music again or writing songs or even playing guitar. It just wasn't bringing me the kind of joy that I'm feeling now. 30 years later, 2023 in the summer, I retired. I was a principal at a K-8 school at Acoma Pueblo, which is about 60 miles to the west of Albuquerque. I started a kind of phenomenon that had starting to hear music in my sleep so that when I woke up, it will sound strange and somewhat untrue, but it's the reality. I would wake up with verses in my head or a verse with melody attached to it. So I quickly got in the habit of having my phone next to me and recording it into my voicemail. Once I allowed that to start, then songs started coming at all hours. My guess is that this happens regularly to songwriters. But for me, it was a massive change in my life because now writing songs became the central part of this sort of late stage identity, and they continue to come.
Did you pick up the guitar again and you started writing songs, or was it that these melodies started coming in your dreams first?
The latter. I started hearing them first. I should say I have this strange phenomenon that's occurred that I've noticed over the last many years, something that Oliver Sacks, the clinical psychologist, has written about in musicophobia. It's this sudden hearing of fully fledged music in a room. Sometimes it feels like it's in the ceiling or in the walls. It's more than one genre. It could be anything. It's an auditory phenomenon. It's not some sort of mental illness. It just, there's music in the air and then it goes away. So it's related to what's happening now, but not exactly the same thing. But then once I started hearing these songs, I heard enough of them or kept hearing snippets of it. That's when I went out and got myself an acoustic guitar. It's hard to remember now, but whenever I got it, I let it sit around for a while before picking it up. And then once these songs became, or these parts of songs began to accumulate, I had to pick up the acoustic guitar again and see what was going on.
I guess why I asked that question too is I wonder if something happened for you to be open. So did you buy the guitar before you started writing?
I don't remember. Oh, before I started writing?
Yeah, before the song started coming.
It's possible I did, but I never played it. I think it was one of these things where I thought to myself, it's hard to remember now. Could have been a few months before. Who knows? That could have been a trigger. If that was the case, it was sitting on a stand in a room waiting for me to play it. Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, that's okay. I find it interesting because sometimes I feel like when we put out little, for lack of better words, just actions of faith, that sometimes we're like opened up to, creative energy coming through us.
It's a good question, and I think it's an important question. I think for me, the music was obviously really important. My processes have changed because there were certain things, many things in my life, my family's life, my friends' lives that I wanted to understand. And it turned out that songwriting was the vehicle for me to try to understand what was happening. I noticed that I'm a slightly better person when I'm writing a song and right after the song, and then I lose it. But I'm temporarily empathetic. Whereas in real life, I could do better in that area. So I think it could be that's what you're talking about. That maybe that was the main. The guitar sitting there certainly is a symbol of something and triggers something, but also all these other things going on in my head that I couldn't grasp. Maybe opened up things, so they had to come out somewhere somehow.
How has Albuquerque, its landscape and its people influenced your writing?
It's everything to me. All but one song I've ever written. I've written over the last couple of years. Everything's been written here in New Mexico. I feel at home here. I feel open here. I connect to something about the place, the landscape, of course, but it's not just the landscape. There's a sort of tacit understanding that if you want to do something, you do it, and you'll be accepted for doing it. So there are many things I've done here in New Mexico that I would have probably had a hard time doing anywhere else. There's something I connect to here that allows me to write music. I don't know I'd be able to write if I left here. That's the truth.
Wow. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I think New Mexico is kind of known for having a creative energy about it.
There are a lot of artists, a lot of musicians here, a lot of people doing a lot of great, brilliant craftspeople. It's a different kind of existence than existence I had in New Jersey or Western Massachusetts. And I love both of those places where I've lived, but there's just something a bit different from this place, about this place.
This album, Ways of the World, is the third album out of 5 of a collection of songs. And can you talk a little bit about this collection or go a little deeper into it?
Yeah, there are 5 albums. I came out with the first album is called Long Way from Paradise, and the previous album to this was called Going to the Mountain. The other 2 albums after this one have already been written. One of them's already been recorded and mastered. It's about 54 songs that have been, well, the 5th one will be recorded next week, actually. We're going into the studio next, the first 2 weeks of March. We'll record the 5th album. The 54 songs were written over roughly the last couple of years.
It's a lot of songs.
Well, there's a lot of others I wrote that I hope never see the light of day. Yeah, they're pretty miserable songs. Sometimes you just write songs because you want to write something a little bit better the next time. Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed when I listen to some songs, but that's okay. It's all part of the process.
Yeah.
I didn't start thinking about this as a 5-album project really until recently when I thought about how the ideas that run through it are similar, but also have shifted over time. And then it was sort of like serendipity in a way. I was thinking that the first song on my first album is about a narrator who is kind of lost, seeking God, or his or her idea of God, some sort of understanding. And now on the 5th album that we're about to record, the very last song on that album, it's a song that responds to that very first song. So it ties it all together.
That's cool.
It's not quite an answer, but it's a realization in that very last song. The album is a pretty quiet album in general, although there's some electric pieces. It's pretty sparse, and it tends towards, it's not quite country, but it's more traditional in some ways. But as songwriting has shifted, the music has shifted. I've found that now that blues, even gospel, come into the more recent songwriting, introduced introduced Hammond organ into the band,
Oh, I love Hammond B3.
and clavinet and piano, and also cello too, and then accordion.
So how do you decide how to group these different albums, the different songs, what songs goes where, since you had so much material?
Well, as I said, some songs are so bad it's easy to get rid of those. But the ones that kind of that are on the margin, there are possibilities. Sometimes get put off for a future album, but mostly don't ever show up at all. I think it has to feel right to me. And then if I've already said something in a particular song, I don't want to say it again. The engineer I work with, Jason Reed at Frogville in Santa Fe, he has a repeated phrase, why write the same song twice? So if I feel like I've done that, then I'll discard a song. Mostly it's about whether I still feel something from the song. I often, after I've already given songs to the band a month or two before, I'm still writing. What's happened each time, it's not the fifth time, I replace a couple of songs that I've sent them with other songs because they just make more sense. They follow a certain idea. They have the same kind of feel or a vibe that makes more sense. Because the music has become a lot more diverse and there's more genres represented, it could be just a scattering of songs, but there has to be something, or a random sampling of songs, but so there has to be something that links them all besides just my voice. So I think about a lot of things like that. But mostly it's about the vibe and the feel. Do they work for me still, and do they work together?
Okay.
Especially intentional in Ways of the World.
Uh-huh.
Very intentional about what songs would go on these albums because I'm old-fashioned. I grew up listening to albums.
Yeah.
And that kind of experience I would like listeners to have.
There's something about a grouping of songs in a whole album that you just can't get from a single because it's a capture of a moment in time.
Sometimes I'm grabbing songs from a year ago. Since they're mostly written all together, they are capturing a moment in time or a condensed period of time.
Right.
So in some ways, they do belong together for that reason.
The song, The Water, it starts out, I hear a rain stick in that song. It's kind of got this jazzy rock yet earthy sound. The closest I can compare it to is Chris Isaak in the way that it is just kind of smoothed out. It's just a really great song. I really love that song. And I've noticed on your album, the drums are so different and play a different kind of feel. Can you talk a little bit about that song, The Water?
Songwriting has replaced prose writing in a way because it allows me to tell stories. But there's a limit to it. You can't write a song that's an hour long. Or is a really condensed life of a person. It's 5 verses, repeated chorus, and a person who's a Job-like character. All sorts of things happen to him that confuse him. He just can't figure it out. But he still retains hope in something. He's seeking something. He's asking for something. And in a sense, he finds it, this unnameable kind of thing that allows him to live a life. As far as the drums, Mark Clark is a brilliant drummer. He's played with Atmar Liepart, played with John Popper from the Blues Travelers.
Okay.
He comes into the studio with all sorts of interesting percussive materials that aren't really meant necessarily primarily for percussion, but he adds them to the mix. We add them when necessary. He and I work really well together. He's a songwriter himself.
Uh-huh.
He gets what the songs are trying to do. The drums are so central to that particular song. And I've said elsewhere that I love working with the musicians that I do because they're great musicians, but they're serving the song and they're bringing out aspects of the song, of a given song that I don't hear myself. In the best song, the music is not just there to support a voice. They're there to tell a story too.
Yeah.
And that's the objective that we have in the studio.
That's great.
Are the musicians also telling a story that's either the same story as the lyrics and what my voice is telling, or another aspect of the story? And in that particular song, The Water, I think they've added this texture that I don't know the song would have without them.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
Yeah, and I'm lucky to work with them.
There was something that you said in there too. So we had Jeffrey Himes on this show. Mostly I interview musicians, singer-songwriters. But Jeffrey was a writer for years in DC, music writer. There was something that he said that just really caught my attention. One thing I liked about talking with him is because I'm so used to talking with musicians and being a musician myself, I think from that world, but he was thinking as a music critic and a music listener. And so it was a really cool conversation. But one thing he said was a lot of people who maybe say 200 years ago or whatever would be prose writers, or even 100 years ago would be prose writers now have become songwriters, starting out in that world of writing poetry and stuff. I thought that that was very perceptive, that how a lot of your world around you has a lot to do with your creative outlet in that respect. So I'm a songwriter myself, and I started just writing lyrics, and then the music came because of it. But I find it interesting that with you, your passion for writing and writing novels, and then now your expression as a lyricist and songwriter, you definitely hear it in your album, your prose writing. It's really, really great.
Often these days, I'm playing guitar and I'm just making noises. I'm just singing nonsense sounds until some words make sense, come out organically. That's just the start of it, to find what this possible song is about through just singing sounds. And then suddenly words start popping up. And now I have something a little bit more focused to pay attention to. I never start with lyrics. Well, less so these days. I sometimes will hear a melody with lyrics when I'm walking, or often when I'm driving, especially long distances. I'll start singing in the car. Suddenly there's the chorus to a new song. But the beginning of that singing in that car is nonsense. It's just sounds. And that's how the title song of my previous album, Going to the Mountain, was written on the road as I was driving in that way from Albuquerque to San Diego and back. And I still remember the experience down around Tucson. But that was the beginning of that song. Nonsense to a phrase that somehow just stuck, that phrase going to the mountain. And then a couple of days later, I had a song once I got home, and then it became the title song of the album. What you're saying about being open is really important. Of course, I think lots of people are totally capable of writing songs, of doing any of that. Everybody is so busy and filled with other priorities, like how to make a living, taking care of their kids, like whatever it is. But so it's a kind of a gift when you don't have those distractions and when you can remain open to whatever comes out.
Do you feel like, though, because for 30 years, when you weren't songwriting, that you were kind of using your writing muscles, even if it was through books or prose, do you feel like that helped you be a better songwriter?
I don't think so, but I have no idea. I think I struggled as a writer because you have the license, unfortunately, to fill the space with words when it's not necessary. If you think of a great short story writer like Flannery O'Connor, who was able to condense whole lives into 10 or 20 pages, that's more analogous to a songwriter than any novelist.
Yeah.
I think the way my brain works, I need the framework of writing of songs makes sense for me. And so it could have informed what I'm doing now. But as you know, as a songwriter, the phrasing has to match the music. Everything has to come together in a piece that's usually not particularly long. I tend to write long songs, probably too long. They're 5 or 6 minutes long, many of them. But still, that's a short amount of time compared to what it takes to say or read a novel. So every word becomes absolutely essential, really important. So I'm thinking about it now, like now. When I'm writing now, it's word by word almost, although I don't write that way. But when I go back to think about it, every word has to make sense. Every line has to make sense. I'm often rewriting, sometimes weeks later, or sometimes even in the studio, if I didn't catch something before. That's different for me. That kind of framework, those kinds of rules almost, it works well for me.
I think you're a great lyricist. That was one of the things that caught me, just so you know, when I started listening. I mean, I love the music, I love the vibe and the feel, but I love your lyrics too. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
The song, All the Words You Never Said, it has such a cool sound. Can you talk a little bit about that song?
Well, I'm kind of glad you asked me about it because you're the first person to ask me about that particular song. I don't know how much of that song is autobiographical. It's a story. It's a story of two people that I imagine lying on a bed, and one of them is dying for his last few months, and the other person next to him is asking still to be noticed, wants to be invited into his world. It's a world he's kept to himself. The beginning of that song was, strangely enough, was a trip to Peru. It's the only time I've been to South America. Traveling with my son, who was in school in Argentina, and every morning in Cusco, I would go and have tea or coffee, and there was this just beautiful guitar music, solo guitar in a minor key. It was just absolutely gorgeous. And so this song is also the same. It's really acoustic guitar music, even though there's electric in there. It matched for me the story that was being told. When will this person ever give the love that the other person desired, or is it too late? And that's in real life, that's been on my mind. But real life songs, everything's real life, even if
Right.
it's made up. That's what I was thinking about when I was writing this song.
In your bio, it says you're currently undergoing treatments for cancer. How has this changed your outlook on writing and music and life in general, or has it?
In some ways, it's changed a lot. In other ways, it's just part of the continuum, same part of the spectrum. When songs started coming back to me, what also came was this idea that there's not a lot of time, this sort of compulsion to write and write and write, sing. And I think that having cancer has the same kind of feeling. Maybe it's a little more intense now. The kind of cancer I have is stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer, which means it's spread. I'm fine. I'm being treated, going through the normal cancer therapy processes. Right after the second album, the day after we were done with sessions, the mixing, I had a biopsy. And a few days later, I learned that I had cancer through, they send it back to you before the doctor contacts you. And then the same morning, my wife and I were going to go talk to the doctor. I woke up very early, picked up my guitar. I don't know what time it was, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. I started writing the songs, just started coming out. And that's The Train Is Coming, the last song on the album. It's a gospel song. I'm Jewish. I didn't grow up gospel music, but it felt right. I was pretty surprised about the song because it's an upbeat song with lyrics, if they're taken out of context of the music, it'd certainly be sad and morbid, but they weren't intended to be that way. They were a snapshot in time. They were me, probably for the first time in my life, accepting that I'm mortal or that I will die someday. And now it was right in front of me. These were early days. I didn't know what this diagnosis meant. I still am learning about it. When you see stage 4 in front of cancer, you have a lot of questions. That song was the first direct response to the diagnosis as far as songwriting. I've had a lot of other emotions since then, none of them as accepting maybe as that one. So it remains in a way aspirational. Many of the other songs on Ways of the World do deal with mortality at some level. I think what happened, my first reaction to fully answer your question, I learned more about it, unfortunately, reading erroneous information online. But then knowing the reality of it, I didn't know how much longer I had. And I was frantically writing songs at that point and wanting to go in the studio as soon as possible. And I did. We were in the studio, I think it was just a few months later. At that point, I'd already gone through radiation for my ribs and then 5 weeks of 5 times a week radiation for my prostate. And then that same week I was done with radiation for my prostate. Just a few days later, we were in the studio for Ways of the World.
Wow.
Should have waited if I could have waited. I didn't know what was in store for me, but so I just wanted to get in the studio.
Yeah.
No reason. I don't know. Who cares if more songs that come out into the universe? There's hundreds of thousands of songs dropped every year. More. You know that.
Yeah.
I felt a compulsion to get these songs written and recorded, thinking it was almost my last statement. But as it turned out, I'm not dead yet. And I wrote 2 more albums. Essentially, it was 3 albums in 1 year I wrote. 2 of them we recorded, which the second one I already mentioned to you will come out in September. So I think I'm still feeling a little frantic.
Yeah.
I'm not calm about it. I'm still trying to understand it all. Like everybody, I live a complicated life, and there's a lot more than just my mortality that I'm thinking about. It's all complicated by the intertwining of everybody's life and yours.
I find it inspiring that you wrote and wrote and wrote, just giving of your art.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Sometimes I don't know what to think of it all. It's been really important to me. Those initial songs that are in Ways of the World, some of them I mentioned that were connected to the diagnosis. The 4th album has some of those too. 4th album is Midnight at Dawn, is really different than Ways of the World. And the 5th one that we're about to record is different than both of those. So it's dealing with things in different ways, trying to come to terms with various things. It's not just about me. Maybe that's one one of the bigger changes. Probably those first few songs that I wrote were trying to understand the way my brain worked. They quickly evolved into my family and people I know, and then it kept expanding to a wider world.
Michael, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and being on the podcast. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I encourage everyone to check out Ways of the World by Michael Rudd.
Can I mention I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, Michael Rudd Music. My website is michaelrudd.com. My music is streaming everywhere. Just wanted to say thank you, Sarah. I've been interviewed before, and I can't recall speaking to somebody who comes at it with such it's a natural feel, good conversation. I did very much enjoy our talk.
Thank you so much for listening to AmericanaMusic.com podcast. Be sure to go to AmericanaMusic.com and find playlists of the Americana artists we've interviewed here. Also, be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast platform.